Yeah. Oh, my. This is hors d'oeuvres for this evening.
There you go.
Yep, it's a snack time tonight. The whole around this corner.
Tonight is the Galabean party.
Yes. You roll your sleeves and you dig into the buffet. So don't let the Galabia get in the way between you and the food.
Never happened.
Never. Okay. This is the first Greco-Roman temple we see together. Greco-Roman period, if you recall, starts from 332 BC to 300 AD. So when we say Greco-Roman period, I mean that is the period. 332 BC to 300 AD, Greco-Roman. When the Greeks came to Egypt, they were encountered with the ancient Egyptian civilization. So they thought, these countries are not very easy for us to conquer if we come here and say, hey, forget about God Amun, and here is another God we introduce. There will be this conflict between the ancient Egyptian civilization and the Hellenistic civilization. So the Greeks decided we will be wasting our effort and our time if we try to introduce our own civilization. The best thing to do is play, how you call it, make it like, we'll forget about our own civilization and we will adapt the Egyptian civilization until we filter in smoothly, establish solid grounds, then we will introduce our own civilization. And that was a smart trick the Greeks played to the Egyptians. They came here and said, okay, you like this area, you say it's the area of God Sobek, the crocodile, no problem for us. We will build you a temple, we dedicate it to God Sobek. So see how good we are. We will even dress up like the ancient pharaohs. So we are not foreigners. This how these Greeks managed to conquer the country with no fighting, no opposition from any Egyptians, and they succeeded. So when you see a temple built by the Greeks and the Romans, you see the Greeks built the temple here on the original foundation of an ancient Egyptian temple that was dedicated to Sobek. So the Greeks found the debris and they decided, this is a sacred ground for you. Bless you. This is a sacred ground for you. We will build the temple on top. See how good we are? And the Romans did the same thing. They added to the temple that existed originally by the Greeks. Sobek, because there is a beautiful curve in the river where the crocodiles used to reside. So when the ancient Egyptians came here, they thought, this is the territory of the crocodile, so we will build a temple for such a god. So he will be kind enough and cure the people. So the crocodile was the good doctor or the healer. A unique feature we see in this temple is that it has been dedicated to two gods at the same time. Now the Egyptians have always been family people. The king should have a wife and a son. There should be triads. So they thought the god will be lonely if he's all alone. So the god should have a wife and a son. So there were triads. This temple has been dedicated to two gods at the same time, not just one. God Sobek, the crocodile, and God Horus, the elder, whom we call Heroris. So after a while, you'll notice that temples are the same. No, each temple has its own style. So the temple of Komombo was dedicated to two gods. Each has his own triads. So a unique feature we see here is the concept of duality. Two gods at the same time to whom this temple was built. Komombo means Kom, the mound of. Ombo is Nebu, derived from the word gold. So evidently, here once existed golden mines. So it is called Komombo or the mound of gold. The temple is Greco-Roman, so the features will be different than what we saw yesterday. If you look at the reliefs here, you notice that they are very curvaceous. Very round and what we saw yesterday, so that's typical Greco-Roman. So the Greeks, when they came here, they dressed up like the ancient pharaohs. They built temples to the ancient gods. They thought, okay, we are losing our identity. I mean, people won't recognize that this is Greco-Roman unless we have a different style of art, which is curvaceousness in the outlines, simply to be recognized than the ancient Egyptian temples. That was the unique feature we would see. Even you step inside a temple and you see this collection of capitals. If you recall, the capitals we've seen so far would be papyrus or lotus. When the Greeks came, they were fascinated by everything is so rich and so beautiful, and they wanted to capture everything in one capital. So we call it composite. So composite capitals are typical from the Greco-Roman period and curvaceousness is typical Greco-Roman period. These would be two clues to guide you as which kind of temple that is. Curvaceousness in outlines and composite capitals, a little bit of everything in one. Like over there you see, this is grapefruit and grapes and a bundle of scrolls of papyrus. This is lotus, that's palmiform. So a little bit of everything in one whole. That's typical Greco-Roman. Wherever you look, it was painted once. Let's see traces of some original style. As we will see tomorrow at the Temple of Exodus, we have a clear slab. So this will give us a clue on how everything was painted once. Although, you might wonder, yesterday we've been inside an earlier temple as we were doing, and they had all the time to paint on the rock right away. So limestone was porous and they painted, waited till it dried, painted again and again. So the colors were so deep in the masonry. While the Greeks, who were in a hurry because they didn't think that they would last for long on the throne. So that was faster. They didn't have to wait for anything to dry and repaint again. So that's why Greco-Roman temples are no newer than what we saw yesterday, but the colors didn't last because it was on a layer of plaster that fell off. Let's see something else. Now,
Egyptians moved slowly.
yes.
It turned out that the Greeks became Egyptian slowly. The Egyptian
invaders. So they
à Saqqara, par exemple, ou même au musée de l'art antique.
This is what we call a hippo-style hall, colonnaded and was roofed originally. Here, as scenes on the wall, we understand what took place here every morning. We know that each and every pharaoh, king, Ptolemaic or ancient Egyptian or Roman, in sequence, ancient Egyptian, Greek or Roman, they lived in precinct in the area made out of adobe or mud brick. Their palaces were made out of mud brick. And they knew that these palaces won't last forever and they didn't care. What should last forever is the house of the god, which is the temple, and their tomb, which is their palace in the life to come. These things should last. Their precinct shouldn't, and they didn't care. So here it shows the king coming from his palace in the morning with his sandals on. Once they stepped inside the temple, they had to take their sandals off. These are sacred grounds. We do the same when we go to a mosque. So in ancient time, he's coming from his palace with his sandals on and preceded by his son. Side lock of hair was sign of youth. So the son is acting like a high priest. So he wears a panther skin, purifies the path of his father as they are all approaching the temple, preceded by a procession of symbols carrying flag standards that used to be inserted at the entrance of the temple itself. So here is the procession approaching the temple. Once they are in here, he would take his sandals off. Then he has to be baptized. He has to be purified before he can perform any processions in here, any daily procedures. So he's being baptized by Thoth, the Ibis bird, the god of wisdom, and by Horus, the elder and the good doctor. So both gods are baptizing the king by pouring over his head the key of life and the sign of stability. Key of life and sign of stability. This is how the king was baptized. The second step will be, he will be encrowned. They put over his head the two crowns of Upper and Lower Egypt. Then if we come this way, we'll see here is a special occasion. So that's why the king is dressed up in a special garment. Over there we see wearing a short skirt. Here he dresses up in a special garment because he's receiving the sword of victory and the symbol that says that he can rule for thousands and thousands of years. We saw this symbol before yesterday at Abu Simbel. How he will be given this emblem saying that you can rule over Egypt for thousands and thousands of years to come. So Horus the elder gives the king the sword of victory and this symbol, and for such an occasion he dresses up, and there are two Cleopatras attending, a mother and a wife. We know in history we have 7 Cleopatras. The famous one is the 7th. She who fell in love with Mark Antony in the year 31 BC, thus terminating the Ptolemaic Empire, starting the Roman Empire. So 2 Cleopatras and the king, and while he's receiving the sword of victory, an emblem to rule for thousands of years to come. Here, here, here. These dovetail joints had wooden pieces. That's why we have these grooves.
So can you
occasionally someone comes and pours water. So the wood in the dovetail joints would expand and tightly fits the stones together. So they had dovetail joints for construction, fitted with wood, which would be wet regularly to have another story here and another and another. So that was the method of construction, not counting on the heavy weight of slabs, because this sandstone is not that heavy. Important part in any temple, the altar, where the royal boat of the god will be put, a sedan inside which the statue of the god will be put, right over there, over this altar, which is made out of grey granite. In front of this altar would be an offering table where the priest would collect the offerings from the people outside and place it over this offering table. At the end of the day, the valuable offerings like silk, gold, incense, silver would be stored in offering rooms behind you. These are offering rooms. For time of trouble, if any Egyptian warrior falls as a prisoner in a different country, they will take these offerings and pay ransom for the Egyptian warrior. They go to a strange country and say, okay, here is some gold, give us our warriors back. So offering rooms had valuable kind of offerings. How about the other edible kind of offering? At the end of the day, the priest will take it home. We're talking about the offerings put in front of the altar, which is right over there. Presented by the people outside, collected by the priest, put over the offering table in front of the altar, where the boat of God Sabbath will be put, and the sedan and the golden statue of the god. The valuable offerings will be stored in offering rooms. The edible offerings will be used by the priest at the end of the day. On the opposite side is another altar, because if you remember, there were 2 gods worshipped here, Sobek and Heroris, the crocodile, and Horus the elder. So 2 altars in one temple as a unique feature. The wall goes up, and you see dovetail joints again. The method with which they built the temple would wet, expands, and tightly fits the stones together. There is a crypt down there that once led to these offering rooms, but the crypt is inaccessible. It doesn't go there anymore, and the rumor or the story says that this crypt used to be for the priest. He would hide down there. So in the morning when the king comes and looks at the offering table, finds nothing, the priest will make a sound like, God Sabbath accepted the offering. Maybe tomorrow you should bring some more offerings collected from the people. So maybe it was the priest playing a trick on the king, or both were playing a trick on the people outside to give more offerings. So they say that was the use of the crypt down there, but it's not open anymore. Because if it's high, it meant a prosperous year. It meant the people can pay extra taxes. And he was in charge. He'd go like, hallelujah. Turn around, okay, let's talk about the tax. So the higher the mark on the wall, the better, because he will collect more taxes. So this is what we call a nilometer or a hydraulic installation. Very important, so it looks like the key of life. The shape of it is like the key of life. This is one explanation. Other books would say, no, this is what filtered into there. Then when the crocodiles died, they'd be mummified and as a god worshipped in the area. When the king would appear in front of his people for receiving offerings, he would have the crocodile with him, like, here is your god and here I am, God on earth, you should give offerings to me. That was the idea as well. Some of our food, huh? Just in case. Just in case. Still has. And my grandmother used to suffer from rheumatism on her back. My father used to heat these cups and put it over her shoulder to rid the shoulder from any dampness in it, from rheumatism sort of. So the glass cups are still drawn over there. That's number one. Medical instrument they had in ancient times, used up to today. Another medical instrument, as far as we know about the art of mummification, is that they took 4 things out: lungs, liver, intestine, and the brain. the brain was not taken, don't open the skull, they operate from here. So this is one operation they had in ancient time, they still do up till today. Another operation, which is babies delivered to this outer atmosphere, the first exposure to this atmosphere, there is a damaged tissues, percentage of damaged tissues in the child's brain with the first encounter with the outer atmosphere. To minimize such a thing, babies were delivered in water. So this minimized the percentage of damaged tissues in their brains. That's in ancient time, they do the same nowadays. And the little baby will survive instinct, will start swimming. So this is an operation they had in ancient time up to today. They still have, up to today, birth stools, where the woman in labor would sit in this position, pressing on her baby to be delivered with the help of gravity on the birth stool. They still do the same, use the same in this area with midwives and so on. So there is nothing new under the sun. Where the people are standing, we have the glass cups, we have scalpers, scissors, a scale to weigh the medication, and they have the glass cups with the fruit. These Greeks and Romans copied what the ancient Egyptians had and depicted in their temples, because this is the temple of Sobek, the crocodile, the healer, or the Buddha. So this is more or less the idea about the temple of Komombo, where minds exist.
So women.